What is happening, everybody? MG here, MG Covers, bringing you a brand new sports handicapping video. Title of this video, How to Play Early and Beat Closing Line. Super fascinating topic. If you follow me in the past, you know how my thoughts on closing line value. So we'll get into that in just a second. If you're watching this video for the first time, greatly appreciate you subscribing to the channel. Do have a video coming for subs. I think it's going to be a totals model, not related to this particular video, but I do believe I'm going to release that, put that on the YouTube. It's a completely different model, profitable as well. If you want to follow me on social media, MG Covers is the screen name, spelled with a Z. Give it a ton of content on Instagram, the same screen name on Twitter. So if you follow me there, subscribe to the channel, get a ton of value, and don't have to come out of pocket any dough. So let's dive into this totals model and NBA model in general and talk about how to beat closing line value. Now, the whole premise, you'll hear people say to get the best line, play early. The problem I have with that statement is generic advice, and you'll hear a lot of sharps say that, hey, to beat the closing line, you have to play early. Giving that as generic advice, the majority of people don't have a model. So when you tell people to play early, what do you want them to base their handicapping on? So if you're advocating them to play early without a model, basically what you're telling them to do is guess at games. And let me give you another example with regards to line movement. You said, well, they could watch line movement. Well, here's the problem. I just watched a fascinating, I think it was a podcast. I can't remember the name of it. They were interviewing a book, and he was director of the sports book. And he said, let's say the line's -6. Let's say he gets a large chunk of public money at -6. He says, often, more times than not, he'll go ahead and bump that line to 6.5, even though it's not sharp money, just not to be vulnerable, because he'd rather bump it to 6.5 and have somebody buy it back down at the 6.5 than to leave it at 6 and then get hammered again. So the point is, that's not really sharp movement. So if you react to that, you'd be wrong. So the most important parts of line in the context of a game is the opening line and the closing line. Those are your two most important parts. Opening line, where does that line go from opening? And then the closing line, where is the last move of that closing line? Because if it's subtle and sharp late, more times than not, it's sharp. Okay, so the only way to beat the closing line, and the way, if you're going to be somebody that plays early, you have to have a model, because that's the only way you can tell if the line the sportsbook has is a good line or not, and if there's value. So by playing early, yes, you can get better lines, and I'm going to show you that in this video with my model here for NBA. So that's the whole premise. The only way to do it is you have to have a model. Not only do you have to have a model, you have to have a proven statistical model that is better than the books line. All right, so I want to show you, we're going to do it with totals, but I do want to show you the accuracy of this model with just the sides, which is primarily what I've been playing. You take a look here. We had, this is from last night, 129. We had Knicks -21.5. This is my line. Cleveland, we had -10. Phoenix, we had -16. So let's go look at the books line here. New York won 113-92. Clippers, well, let me put it on the sides here so you can see the books line here. And I'm at bookmakersreview.com. All right, you can see here, New York was basically -9. Clippers were underdogs. I'm sorry, Cleveland were underdogs and won. And Phoenix was an underdog and basically blew out Miami. So my line, far more accurate than the books line there. You scroll down, take a look here at Boston was -8. You take a look at my line, we had Boston -12. So that was a loss. Let's go over here and look at, what's the other one? Oh, Sacramento and Memphis. We basically had that game as even. You take a look at the books line. The books line had, depending on which book you got, you could have got +11, +10.5. Didn't play this one, but Memphis still would have covered there. And we scroll down here to Dallas. You take a look at Dallas, Orlando. The line was Orlando basically +4. Some books had it as low as, looks like one book had it at 3.5. And you take a look at my model. Orlando -3. Now, they ended up losing the game, but they covered the line of 4 there. So out of those games I mentioned, Knicks, Cleveland, Phoenix, Memphis all won, and Boston, Orlando lost. So basically, the model went 4-2 there. So pretty impressive. Okay, now this is the part I want to get into. So I'm going to take a look at we're going to take my lines and compare them to the totals line. And so, I mean, my line compared to the opening line of the sports books. So let me get this screen fixed here. Okay. So we'll start here with New York and Charlotte. You can see here now what this is at Bookmakers Review. They basically create what's called a generic opening line, a consensus opening line. So they'll take the opening lines of all the sports books they have, and they have some sharp books in here and some very recreational books as well. So it's a good consensus opening line. You can see here, notice this opening line 223 and a half, move it all the way down to 218. One book had it at 219. So it's moving towards the under. And then we come back over here to my model. Look at my model, 217. So again, if we play that early, we would have had about, a 6 point, about a 6 point margin. All right. Let's take a look at another one. I said we'll do it the other way since we're on this page. Take a look at Clippers and Cleveland. We had at Clippers and Cleveland at 220 my line. Let's see what the book's line was. Clippers and Cleveland basically at 226 and a half and pretty much stayed there. Yeah, most books had it 226 and a half, and that cashed on the under. So not a lot of movement, but still my line was more accurate than the book's line there. All right, let's go back to the model. Let's take a look at Phoenix and Miami. My line was 217. We'll go here to the book's line. They go 229 and a half. And most books, it moved up to the 230. So in this case, the line, this is interesting. And this is when you know you have a really good model. When the market moves against you and you end up winning, that's when you know pretty good model. That's generally speaking over a large sample size, of course. But the line was 230 and the under cashed pretty easily there. So my line way more accurate than the book's line. In that case, we lose basically half a point. So if you do play early to beat the closing line in this situation, even though we would not have beaten the line per se, and that'll happen. But as you'll see, when we go through these, the majority of time you will get a better number. Okay, Utah and Brooklyn. Let's go back to the model. Okay, my line is 237 there. Utah and Brooklyn opened at 233. And you can see how this, yeah, the same deal here. Look how fast it shot up. It basically closed at 237. So really by the time that line was seasoned, so to speak, by the time it closed, there was no value off of the actual books line, but I played early, would have gotten, 3-4 points of value. And obviously that cashed on the over. All right. New Orleans and Boston. My line was 227. Let's take a look at the books line, 227, 232 and a half. And yeah, it looks like most of these books closed at 233. Yeah. Wait, let me go back and see what I'm looking at here. Yeah, so then that would have been, yeah, that cashed on the under. So that's a total of, had a brain freeze. Yeah, 230. So again, 232. If we play this at opening, and that's the point and premise of this video, we've got the line at 232 and a half, and you can see most books had it at 234, 233 and a half. So we would have gotten a better line playing this early. And of course, that did cash on the under. Very, very, very sharp model. Super excited. All right, let's move on down here. Let's go to Washington and San Antonio. We had it at 238. Books line had opened at 242 and a half. And let's see. Yep, that actually cashed on the, yeah, not a lot of movement. 242 and a half. Some books it went down 241 and a half. So it did go down a tad. Bookmaker had it here at 242. So yeah, everything went down, moving towards my line. And of course, that did cash on the under as well. So that was a win for the model. All right, so let's move on to Sacramento and Memphis here. 228 was my line. Books line had it at 229. And then you can see here, this line moved way to the under. So my line was 29. So we'll basically count that as a loss there because, my line had it at 229. The under cashed easily here. So that would have been a loss via the model. All right, Minnesota and OKC. My line was 220. Opening line was 226 and a half. And it moved down slightly, 225, 224. So that was a win for the model as well. But again, you could see here at 226, we would have gotten a better number, right? We'd have picked up maybe like a point and a half. So again, you can play early and beat the closing line, but the only way to do it is to have a model that's accurate. Because otherwise, if you don't, you're just in essence guessing at games. All right, Lakers, Houston. Check out my line there at 250. This was a big one here. Opening line was 228 and a half. Lakers, Houston. That easily cashed on the over, and that moved significantly. Some books had it 232, moved all the way up to 235. So another win for the model there. Orlando and Dallas. Let's take a look at my line. Was Orlando, Dallas 224. Take a look at the books line here, 229. And that did move down a little bit. But you could see playing the early, we would have picked up two points of value, but that was actually a loss. Okay, let's go back to Milwaukee and Denver, 237. My line. Take a look at the books line, 241. So you can see right there, 241 to 237. That was basically a 4-point differential, right? But now look what happens to the line when it moves. Basically sucks out all the value. So if I play this early, would have gotten 3-4 points of value there. If you play by the time the line closed, there would be no value. But if you played off that opening line of 241, that would have been a win there. And then finally, Philadelphia and Portland. My line was 229. Take a look at the books line. 224. And this is a really good example because you can see here, let's say I do play this early and get the 224 line. Now, actually, we would have, and again, this is another instance where, when you're beating the general public or the line move itself, that's when you have a really sharp model because you can see here the line basically moves towards the under, but it actually cashed on the over. So that would be a quote win for the model there. So, but as you can see, the majority of time if we would have played early, we would have gotten a better line for pretty much all of those lines with the exception of two. I think one we lost and one we would have won easily. So it's a very sharp model. So if you're going to beat the closing line, the only way to do it is you have to have a model. You have to originate, create your own model, and then compare that to the opening line. And yes, more times than not, you will beat closing line. The problem I have with giving people generic advice to play early to beat the closing line, if somebody doesn't have a model, you're basically advocating them to guess at game. So anyway, super excited about this NBA model, having a ton of success with it, both on the total side, which I'm primarily playing sides. I have dived into a few totals, but may start looking at these totals a lot more seriously. If you want access to these power rankings, you can do that. Get it for very low price, $50 a month. You also get access to all my coaching videos on the site. There's about 150 plus coaching videos so you can learn to basically how to handicap. If you want access to all my plays, that's $100. And if you join for an entire year, that's the best value. It's like getting an associate's degree in sports betting. $500, you save about $600 as opposed to paying $100 a month. You can pay $500 one time, get access to everything on the site for $500. Greatly appreciate you subscribing to this video. Look for that other totals model that I'll give out to anybody that subscribed to the YouTube channel. Hope to have that out here in the next few days. Thanks for watching. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.